That was She Bangs the Drums by the Stone Roses. And hello and welcome to the first June edition of the Wallop Sessions. I am your host with the most, Austin Russell. We have an absolutely stacked show for you today, and I cannot wait to get into it. We have my review for my most anticipated film of the year so far in Finding Emily, which I'm really excited to talk to you guys about. We are also going to be diving into one of the scariest films I've ever seen in Obsession this week. I'm really looking forward to you guys hearing my thoughts on that because I was holding on for dear life during that viewing experience. And I can't wait to tell you what I was actually able to be brave enough to watch this week. So we'll be getting into that, and also we will be getting into the homework for this week in my favourite movie of all time, A Real Pain. I'm really excited for that. And obviously, we'll also be continuing our conversation with Nat Shelley about the Manosphere later on this show. No pet peeve this week because I'm just that happy because the World Cup is starting this week. I didn't want to ruin everyone's vibe before we kick off in the next week or so. Just nothing but vibes today, getting ready for the World Cup. There's a quick musical break for you guys now with Fluorescent Adolescent by the Arctic Monkeys. That was Little by Oasis on their incredibly underrated 2002 album Heathen Chemistry. That's personally one of my favourite songs from them, are all on those albums like Stop Crying Your Heart Out, Songbird, and Little by Little that you've just heard there. There's loads of great tunes on that album. If you've not listened to it in a while because you've been knee deep in obviously What's the Story Morning Glory and Definitely Maybe, you should definitely maybe check that one out. That's a really good album right there. Right, it's time for the first movie review of the show. This was a film, as I said in the outro last week, I just knew I had to get my eyes on it instantly. Finding Emily had such a unique premise. For those of you who might not remember it from the outro last week, the movie follows a man who gets a phone number of a woman in a nightclub, but the phone number is incorrect. So he goes all around campus to try and find Emily, essentially. And there's this other student, because he doesn't actually go to the university, who needs somebody to be a subject matter to prove that love makes people go insane. So because he's a good case study and she's obviously needing of a case study, they team up to find Emily. And the film is actually very, 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 very good. I really enjoyed basically every second of that film. The performances are absolutely incredible. Like the chemistry between the two actors is palpable from the minute they start speaking to each other. And I feel a lot of the time, especially in modern romance films, they kind of go when they're casting it, basically they go, are these two people good looking? Yes. Let's just shove them in a movie together because they'll just be like thirst trap videos on TikTok for the next 6 months, and they leave the casting at that. But both the actress and the actor do an amazing job. I was trying to pinpoint the bloke actually because he looked like he was in a band that I listened to called the Rolling People, but I couldn't find any evidence he was a member of that band, which is really irking me. In fact, I even said to the guy at the Odeon, "Do you recognise that guy?" Because I have no recollection who he is, but he just looks very similar. And he couldn't pinpoint it either, and was equally as frustrated as I was trying to find out who this guy was. But yeah, the story is actually really cool. I did know how it was going to end from the minute the trailers began, and if you've seen a romantic comedy of any kind, you know exactly how the film is going to go. And I probably don't even need to tell you because all romantic comedies kind of do the same ending. But the performances were very good, and as I said, the chemistry was amazing. But one thing I will say in this film, there is one very distracting element that you can't unsee once you've seen it. It's not how not what's necessarily in front of the camera, it's what's behind it. because in a lot of these scenes in this film, there's this absolutely grotesque decision to blur the background when the people are talking, and it's so noticeable and kind of annoying to look at because it kind of ruins the realism of what the film is trying to go after, and it's very distracting at points. Like they'll be stood in like a woods or somewhere with trees, and there'll just be this blurred background that makes every scene look like it's green screened, even though it obviously isn't. I don't know why they came up with that decision personally, but other than that, the movie's great. I loved the fact that the movie didn't have a obviously like a grotesquely obvious comic relief in the film. I love the fact it didn't do that. Um, if you've seen the film Yumi and Tuscany, Yumi and Tuscany did that trope very badly, where there's obviously a guy or girl who's designed to be put in the movie just to make people like laugh with not really any contribution to the narrative. And I'm so glad that this film didn't do that, because that's one thing I'm always scared about with films like this, because they just can't resist those little viral TikToks of somebody going, "Oh, look at this out of pocket comment joke thing" that they'll just post on social media until the end of time. The color grading is really creative. I loved like its uses of like actual pub lighting for a lot of the scenes. It didn't go for the grey realism of like Manchester. It didn't just make it look grey and dreary because it was trying to be realistic like a lot of films. It actually used like pub atmosphere and pub lighting to actually give us an interesting colour palette to look at, which I thought was really good. But it is another film, and this is becoming. Actually, we are going to get a pet peeve today. Why does every movie these days have to have Blue Monday by New Order in it? It seems like I can't escape that song. No matter what film I watch, that song is always in it. I swear, or Marty Supreme, or Finding Emily. It's almost like they're making up for lost time, that they didn't make enough money in their heyday, so they're just selling Blue Monday to everybody that wants it to have a credible song in their soundtrack. It's just so frustrating when you just hear the same songs over and over again in these films. How does it feel to hear the same song over and over again? Not very good. That's basically what I just thought. Every time I hear Blue Monday, I'm just like, oh, can somebody please put this song to bed just for a bit? Because it's a great song as well. I hate to see it overused to the extent that it is. I think it's fully replaced Thunderstruck as the most overused song in films now. Um, and it's just, oh. I was that was the only time I was actually disappointed in the film, that they used Blue Monday again. But other than that, the film rant over. Other than that, the film is actually very good. The performance is very captivating. The premise is really cool because it actually uses like science and attachment theory to justify its premise, and it's a very good premise because of that. Because it trusts actual science and actual socializing in the narrative. A lot of these things that come out with things like they will literally just say like a poem at the start of the film, and then that'll be a metaphor for the whole film. Whereas by using a character's thesis, the narrative develops along with the girl's thesis, which I thought was very interesting. And it does a really good ending. I really liked the ending, obviously, because that's the ending everyone else wanted. But if you do have a chance to go see Finding Emily, I do believe it's still in cinemas as we speak, and you will very much enjoy it. If you need a quick date night film that's some top quality entertainment, then Finding Emily is the movie for you. Now we're going to go back to tunes now with Days Are Forgotten by Kasabian. That was Love You Two Times by The Doors. I can certainly say I love that song more than two times. That is a fantastic song, very underrated by them, I think. Now it is time to figure out whether I am obsessed with Obsession. This film really did catch my eye because I thought it was a real good interpretation of simping culture, and I was very intrigued to see what it would come out with. And to say I was impressed was an understatement. Was it because it was made for under $1 million and made 83? A little bit, like, but that's classic horror behavior. Cheap as chips and then makes a bank. That's classic horror 101. But this film really did surprise me, and I really enjoyed it. As somebody that is new to horror movies, for the sake of this gorgeous program right here, I'm very skeptical every time I step into a theatre to talk about horror films because as I said, I'm new to this. But I thought that this subject matter kind of hit close to home, so I really wanted to observe it for myself. And wow, it was an absolutely incredible experience. The level of effort that must have gone into that script was absolutely incredible. To make that film for as little as they did was borderline impressive, and it had me glued to my seat, and I can finally say that I get why horror is so popular, because before I was a bit like, it's just spicy food, it's a bit grim, I don't know why everyone likes it. But again, I know I keep saying this, but the performances were great. The woman that plays the person that the spell is under does this excellent portrayal of this demon inside her and the real person when she comes back out from the possession, and she delivers this one scene absolutely beautifully when she asks him to put her out of her misery because she's tired of this demon, and he also delivers it perfectly when he goes like, what's so wrong with being with me? And when she says, you were never with me, I was instantly hooked to my seat the minute that scene was on because I did not know what he was going to do. And I think it's got one of the best scenes of the year. I can't describe what happens on it because we're pre-watershed, but I'm gonna say that it was certainly a gory horror film to the point where I spent the last 40 minutes fighting back the urge to be sick, to the point where I could hear people audibly laughing at me in the cinema, and rightly so, watching me just hunched over in the front of my seat. I was like, right, I've got two choices. I stay glued to the screen, or an Odin employee is going to hate me the next time I walk in. And I chose the former. But again, the performances were fantastic. The fact they got that film at such a tiny budget is beyond impressive. But it does have a few pitfalls that I absolutely hate with horror films, and Hokum did this as well. With the main one being the color grading. I don't know what it is with horror movies, but they're absolutely obsessed with this dark blue, like teal look that just goes over every scene imaginable. And I'm just like, oh, that color, the color's not escaping me. It's the color grading equivalent of Blue Monday, ladies and gentlemen. It's in every horror film you could ever imagine. Sort of like this UV, like ugly blue look that's in every film that's made in the genre. And I was like, come on, be a bit more creative. But I also did like the fact of how the narrative was structured, in the sense of I did like the way that the two friends that were in the friendship group outside the couple were a bit like, hang on a minute, this has come out of absolute nowhere. Because I feel like a lot less scripts would make them just happy for each other that they're finally together right before she like leaves her job or whatever. And I feel like a lot of scripts will get carried away with the fact they are together and would gloss over it and ruin a lot of the tension. But I think they did a really good job of actually adding tension in what is essentially a happy moment for the main character, and it's absolutely like beautiful. And the film was all the theatre that I was in particular was absolutely filled with nervous laughter that I thought just summed up the film perfectly because you don't quite know how to think or feel while the film is on, because some of it's just so bizarre and so weird that you want to laugh, but you're just constantly freaked out, but you're not always scared, and that's kind of the perfect thing for a movie like this. So, was I obsessed with Obsession? No, but it certainly was the best horror film I've seen this year so far. I've seen three to give you any indication. Obviously, I talked about Hokum last week, and I talked about Undertone on the first show. Undertone is also a great film that's got the ugly blue color grade going on as well. But yeah, if you've got a chance to go see Obsession, I can't promise that you will be obsessed with it, but you will have an absolutely great time watching it, and I strongly recommend it. Here's some music now with That's What You Get by Paramore. That's What You Get by the legendary band Paramore, my personal favourite song by them. Now it is time to revise the homework for this week. I have been a very generous tutor this week and given you my favourite movie of all time to watch this week in the Jesse Eisenberg directorial debut, A Real Pain. I love this movie so much. I made a documentary about how much I love this film. The movie follows two cousins on a Jewish heritage tour uh, to not just like reconnect with their grandparents after her passing, but to reconnect with each other. And to say that I love this film isn't is the biggest understatement ever. I was trying to find a better word to use, but there's no better word to use than this. The movie is just incredible. Kieran Culkin's performance as this overly confident yet vulnerable individual is just expertly done to the point where he won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. And Jesse Eisenberg plays this shy but emotionally intelligent guy just so well, and their chemistry is just so palpable. It is the best chemistry I've seen in cinema probably of all time. Like, I saw this movie in cinema, I kid you not, 5 times. I own the screenplay, I own the Blu ray. Like, this movie is just simply incredible. It was a labour of love between two people that make films, in Emma Stone and Jesse Eisenberg, and you can just tell that it was such a labour of love. And it throws me off sometimes how realistic the portrayals of these two characters are, and it's just an incredible watch. This the shots are incredible because obviously they use a beautifully picturesque part of Poland. I think it's Warsaw is what they use, and that's a beautiful area of Poland. I hope to go there one day. It looks absolutely incredible every time the area is on screen. The characters are just incredible, and the narrative is just so real and authentic. And I've never seen a film quite like it. It's kind of a film that would have been made in like 2006, 2007. Those low budget, sort of like really good films just about people being mates that you don't really get to see anymore. And those are the sorts of low budget films that I've been crying out for years, because horror films have kind of taken place of that small budget film between mates, and it's just such a beautiful, beautiful film. There's this one scene I think is absolutely gorgeous where they're trying to do something on the roof, and they find this like door that they can't enter, and Benji, Kieran Culkin's character, just decides to like kick the door in and like just go with it anyway and just break the rules. And David follows him, Jesse Eisenberg's character. And scenes like that just made me think, wow, this is just such a what a dynamic between a struggling extrovert and kind of an altogether introvert looks like, because they just sit there and they marvel in each other's like skill set almost, and you can feel it every time they're on screen, where they're just enjoying each other's company every minute they're on screen. And one of the most impressive things about it is there's not really anything they do. Going back to like the romantic comedy thing, obviously it's between two cousins, so that would be more of a Jeremy Kyle episode if that was the case. Um, but yeah, just the fact that they don't do anything particularly special or anything particularly contrived, I guess would be the right word. Because in a romantic comedy, there would be like this big set piece that would make them like fall for each other or be friends again. And that big set piece isn't in there, but yet their growth as friends or that are reconnecting feels so organic without a big set piece like that and without that big sort of like moment of realization that this person is important to me, because their comfortability just comes through the screen every single second the movie plays. And full discretion here, it's the only film that has ever made me cry beyond the first time I've watched it. Full disclosure, I've watched the trailer before and cried at the trailer. Like, that's how much this like movie has connected with me on a personal level. And I think it's impossible to not be connected to this film. I think everybody has a friend like that or had a friend like that that makes that movie feel real to them. And that's why I think it must be a must watch, because I think you're going to walk out of that film appreciating the people in your life that little bit more. And so little films kind of have this message of that's kind of thrown at you in like a over the top metaphor, like in a Marvel film, for example. And again, that's not in this film either. It's just so comfortable in its screenplay and in the actors performing it that the message of the film just just splurts out with no over the top metaphors being used or anything. I think Jesse Eisenberg said that the movie is about dissecting what is the difference between real pain and not so real pain, hence the title of the film. And I totally get that, because you kind of got this character dynamic of Benji's kind of this free spirit that's struggling with his mental health, but David's struggling as well, but he's going down the strict route of taking medications and keeping it on track with it. And that dynamic works so well because he's like, because there are points in the movie where they're both like, well, I'm in pain too, but I'm doing this, and I don't understand why you're not doing this. And those conversations feel so real, and that's why I always tear up with this film, because I've had those conversations, I've had those scenes with people, and I think everybody will relate to this film, like I've already said. There's a reason why it's won endless screenwriting, screenplay awards, and it is just the greatest film ever made. For its relatability, for its beautiful shot composition, the performances are the best I've ever seen in a movie ever, especially with Kieran Culkin as Benji. As I said, the balance between struggling with your mental health and being a humongous extrovert, I think we all know people like that, is just done so perfectly to a masterful degree. Yeah, perfectly is not the right word. Masterfully is the right word. He mastered the role of Benji in a way that I've never seen a role nailed on screen before. I talked last week about The Devil Wears Prada actors like knowing their role very well and understanding the assignment of what the film was trying to do. Well, Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg, they took their roles and their assignments for the film and just went, we're going to make this 20 times better than it needs to be. And they just both just knock it completely out the park. You are serving yourself short if you're a movie fan and you've not added this film to your repertoire, you are missing out beyond belief. This movie needs to be on your watch list yesterday. You can see why I delayed putting this as your homework for the week, because it's just too easy. like it's taken me 4 weeks to give you guys this homework because I felt like I was shooting ducks in a barrel. Like it's just too easy to give you this homework. It's too easy to give you the greatest movie of all time. uh, but yeah, that is my limited thoughts on the movie A Real Pain. If you want a deep insight into my connection with the film, you can watch my latest documentary, but it's not my latest video, called Adulthood Healing Through a Real Pain, where I connect my life story to the film itself. We don't have time to get into all that today, but if you want to get into that with me, check out Adulthood Healing Through a Real Pain on my YouTube channel, Kapow Planet. For me, it's my favourite piece of work I've ever done, and you will ever enjoy it. Just make sure you have a box of tissues, because you will cry. You can also see another reason why I delayed putting this on the show, because it would have been a shameless plug at the end. Anyway, it's back to the music now with Rock With You by Michael Jackson. That was Pulp with Do You Remember the First Time? A callback to the first show there. And before that, we had Rock With You by the great Michael Jackson. I can't believe it's taken me that long to actually play something that's not from the Thriller album. I'm so glad though, because that's my personal favourite Michael Jackson song right there. And it's great to have it finally played on my show. Now it is time for potentially my most important segment where we continue my conversation with the Welsh artist Nat Shelley about the Manosphere. Last week we heard the first part and we still have 2 more weeks of this, so it ends next week. So let's get into my conversation with Welsh artist Nat Shelley about the Manosphere. It's almost like when they promote these courses and things that they're telling you that the answer to success is to impersonate them, which
Yes,
is not necessarily the right thing to do. And very often, when you dig deeper into these things that these people own, it's all they claim they own these things, but it turns out that it's all leased and rented from somebody else's life. So they're impersonating the life that they want and getting people to impersonate that life, and it's basically just a toxic, vile tribute act that nobody
it
wants to
is. Yeah,
see. So it's a bit like I personally have always been a bit like um you've got to kind of you've kind of got to stand out to feel confident within yourself, I think, and have like your own just in life in general. I think one of the reasons why sobriety worked so well for me is I think at the time I think I was suffering a lot with trying to blend in with a lot of people, and it was getting me down and was kind of destroying my confidence because I physically couldn't blend in anymore. There's that famous Jim Carrey quote, isn't there, where like depression is your mind telling you not to play this character anymore. So
I haven't heard that, but that's great. And it's a very similar thing I heard the other day is I think what was it? You you realise that life is a fancy dress party, and you've turned up in your own clothes, or so something along those lines, and it's
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, it was just quite interesting. But like Jim Carrey quotes, I'll make a note of that. I quite like that.
and
The great philosopher Jim Carrey.
I think that when I got sober, that was kind of the first step of being like, right, I'm not going to blend in anymore. And I think I needed something because I was so because when I was at uni and college, I was so caught up in what was supposed to happen.
Mm,
You go to uni, you like don't know meet your wife at uni, you have kids, you settle down after that, and
yeah.
it just wasn't happening because I was I was trying to fulfill that, and that's why it didn't happen because I was trying to blend in. So
And it wasn't
uh,
you.
and wasn't me because it just made me like incredibly desperate and irrational. It
Yeah.
did not benefit me at all. Like one thing I've always thought about in recent times is how right I thought every decision I ever made was when I was like in the thick of it. And now when I've
You do, don't you? Yeah.
back at it, I've gone, oh my God, I can't. I'm not surprised that blew up in my face now. But it's like,
Well,
but
you do, don't you? When you've had a drink, everything just sounds great. This is going to be amazing, and you could even say to yourself, "Am I going to regret this in the morning? No, because I'm. This is the right thing to do." The problem I had is I've got like a I used to have, not so much now since mobiles, but when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, we didn't have mobiles, and I could remember everyone's telephone number. I was really good with numbers, and the problem is I lived by a phone box. So when I was blackout drunk, I'd clearly been ringing up, because I'd have tiny little flashbacks of being in the phone box across the road, and I was just destroying my all my social circles, and I didn't remember it at all. It was dreadful living next door to a phone box. Well, it's even worse now, I guess, with people having mobile phones. But I don't drink anymore, so that's not a problem for me. But yeah, it's regretting those things you do, isn't it?
yeah, and I think as well when you're drinking or anything anytime you've wronged anybody, I don't think people realize how much of a drug the concept of reconciliation is. You know,
Yeah,
like I would kind of when I was like drinking back in the day, you talk to your course mates on Monday, you'd reconcile, then you just do it again. So every time I got the reconciliation, it was almost a permission to keep doing it. And I think,
yeah. It gives because it tells you you're gonna get away with it, and it kind of
and
it encourages that behaviour, doesn't it?
and when I lost touch with my best friend a couple of years ago, a few years ago now, it took me about 3 years to stop getting like high on that drug of reconciliation as well, because I would almost like sometimes just spend my days almost just like high on the hope that it would happen. And I think sometimes the best things that you can do as like uh I don't know, as like a troubled person in general, is kind of realize that listen, reconciliation is not happening. Just make sure it doesn't happen to the people that are still here. And I think
That's a great way to, yeah.
that's something that I had to learn. I had to very much learn, and I think almost like one of the things the Manosphere kind of talks about is, oh, if you get this, or if you get this car, or this house, or this successful business, then those people that have like wronged you will like look back or try and get back or whatever, or because you've proved them wrong. But a lot of the time, they're not going to look at it or know it's even happened because it's been that long and that far away that they're not even going to know or remember that it happened in the first place. So
Yeah.
it's almost like if you buy into this, you don't just, I don't know, fix fix your life, so to speak, but you prove all those doubters wrong. But the hard truth is there's a good chance that the doubters have already forgotten they even doubted you in the first place, and the reconciliation has already died before you put your credit card information in for these courses. And
Yeah.
it's like, but it's like you said, like sometimes you just the best thing you can do is just admit to yourself that reconciliation is not happening, and just make sure that it doesn't happen to anybody else. Let's put up with it.
Yeah,
And
it's a great, it's a very succinct way of putting it. It's it's a demon that I've had ever since, I'm 50 now, and when I was 23, when I kind of became straight, I fell off the wagon a couple of times. Is that the right term, or went on the wagon?
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
it goes. When I got my band together, we started doing well. I drunk a lot, and I drunk a lot again when my mum died about 10, 11 years ago. But uh, I can't remember where I was going with that. But when I was 23, I when I knocked it all on the head, I moved away. I got out of where I was. My name was so bad. I really did. It's it was quite epic how I fell from grace. And I think there were a lot of people there that enjoyed seeing it because I was quite a popular guy before. My brother, especially, had problems with him. He basically became me within my social circle whilst I was in the gutter, weeing myself or
Yeah.
whatever. And I know that a lot of people in my hometown will be aware of, how I've kind of got better. But the problem that I have is being genuinely blackout drunk a lot. It was funny you said earlier about sort of pre-drinking and something that no one really understands because no one, not even my friends, really knew that I was drinking all the time with my mum. Is I was is that I was meeting up on a Friday night with my friends. I'd already had 7 pints, but I would lie and say I was just a bit tipsy. So everyone thought I was a lightweight as well. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, going forward to it, it's I'm not sure about reconciliation because I don't remember. I don't remember what I did. All I know is my hometown. Sort of walking in the street and people crossing the road and not talking to me anymore. And so I knew that I was destroying friendships and relationships and stuff. Um, and that's a problem that I've had for years. And I don't. The only way I know is that I've hurt someone because, like I said, I was very popular when I was younger. Um, so I had a lot of friends, and the only way I know that I've done something to them now is I send a friend request on Facebook. People in their 40s and plus still use Facebook,
Yeah.
and I know that I've upset them badly because they don't accept my friend request. Close friends from school that you would think being in the 40s now and 50 that they'd want to kind of get back in touch, and that hurts. It hurts me. It hurts me that I hurt them. But I was a nasty piece of work when I was drunk when I was young, and it was strange. I had this he was probably in his 40s, a guy called Reese. So when I was about 16, a guy in the pub, he was a lovely guy. He pulled me to one side in the daytime. I just started a session, and he pulled me to one side and he said, "Nat, hey, an old hippie kind of thing." Well, he looked like a hippie, old hippie to me. He was about my age. But he said to me, he said, "Can I ask you a question, dude?" And I said, "Yeah, what's up, Reese?" He said, "Do you drink when you're angry? Or do you only drink when you're angry?" I went, "Oh, Reese, I hadn't really thought about that." He said, "Well, think about it." And I had to think for a minute. I went, "Do you know what? I only drink when I'm angry." And he looked at me and went, "Man, stop it. You're a good man. When you're sober, stop it." And that's the only time anyone ever in my life let me know that I was destroying my life. Everyone else just kind of didn't tell me, and I think it was because I was such a confident, outgoing teenager. I think people just kind of thought he'll deal with it. He's strong. Nat's a strong dude. And then I just got bad to a point where everyone turned their back on me. I think I was walking into the local pubs and making an idiot of myself. Um, so I don't know how I can reconcile with people, and I hate to say it, but, I'd love to be able to do it, but um, I'm not going to be able to do it. I don't know. I don't know where to start. Where would I start with that? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I said, I think those are very painful questions, and even though I've spoken about, learn to put the thought of it behind you, it's something that's always going to creep up and be because it's such an important part into why both of us don't drink that it's never gonna fully leave. Like I remember there was this thing when because I just made a documentary more about the friendship I lost when I was at uni and how my and I drove past them, like I drove past them 3 times whilst I was filming it and didn't
no way.
and there was like no acknowledgement, and it was like it was weird. It was like it. But I'll tell you what was so weird about it. There would have been a time where they would have literally ran from the other side of the high street if I was like that. But I think that's just something that I think it's something that's always going to weigh on people, and I think that's another thing that the Manosphere does is it sells a complete solution when it isn't. When you're looking for these things and stuff like that, there's going to be a day after the happy ending eventually. And
True.
it's and I think you've almost got to come to peace with that. I remember my first year I stopped drinking. I thought all my problems were completely solved, and I went for things that I was not even remotely ready for, because what I didn't realize is my confidence was completely gone. So even though the drinking had stopped, I had no confidence left to act on it or act on how happy I was when I stopped drinking.
Did you have
It's
to
like
kind of like reorganize your thought processes and sort of? It's almost like um, I, I think when you come out of it, it's almost like a shell shock. Um, Almost post traumatic. I hate to say this, but PTSD almost when you come out of drinking. There's a lot to deal with, isn't there? It's not just stop drinking and everything's going to be rosy. It wasn't for
but
me.
I think when you're in it though, you do think that is the one thing that's going to solve everything. But I think one thing that sobriety taught me to do was that I had a platform to actually work on things after I stopped drinking. When I when I wasn't, in the constant like cycle of drink, apologize, go out drinking again, apologize, and it's a tedious cycle anyway for you to do it, even though you're drinking and doing it. It's also tedious for the people receiving it as well. It's kind of, and I don't think people realize how much time it takes up with personal growth. Just that.
Yeah, and don't forget as well. Say a lot of people who drink, like say when I wasn't drunk and I was watching my mum drink, she wouldn't remember a thing she'd done, and she would reset every day as as though nothing happened the night before. That she didn't throw a glass at someone or she didn't punch me in the face. Do you know what I mean? I guess going back to just not remembering what you did to be able to reconcile. I guess what we were talking about before. But so how deep did you get into the manosphere then? I know you're supposed to be asking me questions, but
Uh,
when you say
I
newspaper gone out, did you actually get involved in it, or did you just skim and look?
I did not get involved in it personally, thanks to like my NFL people and having
Yeah,
really good idols in that part of my life. It didn't unfortunately happen. Um, but I I've always been the sort of guy, and I think that this is another thing as well, where I get very overly attached to things that help me out a lot of the
yeah,
time. So I get so I get over attached to like interests and things, and that was very much on my mind because I was like, if I get involved in this, I wouldn't get out. That was
yeah.
one of my
I get that
thoughts.
completely. Well, I don't know whether it has anything to do with my ease at becoming addicted to chemicals and alcohol and stuff, but I'm very much the same. I thought basically when my mum died, just before she died of lung cancer, and she said to me, she said, "You do know if you were in school today, you'd be on the spectrum." And I laughed,
Yeah,
and she went, "No, seriously, Nat, you would." And then I kind of thought about it, and the amount of people who've told me over the years, or asked me, "Are you autistic?" Because I hyper focus on any hobby, anything, anything I can. I get too engrossed in it, and I do hyper focus on that kind of thing. And I spoke to an autism expert, and because my daughter is quite severely autistic, and she said, "Look, without a diagnosis, I can't tell you, but yes, talking to you and stuff, she can see that I." I hyper focus on things. I think that helped me actually with coming off alcohol, in a way, but it probably didn't help me in getting onto alcohol because it became a
yeah,
life very easily. I know my mum was kind of encouraging me, and it was a 24-hour party for the first year or so. But I think that hyper focus and I don't want to say obsessiveness, but almost the OCD kind of aspect of it is yeah, it can be quite dangerous, and I think that it helped me and hindered me in a way. Probably my alcohol, was just like uh, it fed that kind of almost control. I could just control and just drink. I dropped out of school. I lost my friends, but it doesn't matter. I had lots to drink, and my mum was always up for a drink as well. But then when I came off it, that exact same trait of mine, my proclivity to focus on a goal, my issue was actually having a goal. But when I do have a goal, I hyper focus on it, and that helped me when I gave up drinking then, because I was writing graphs, charts, everything, plotting my the day that I didn't drink anymore. I did it recently with smoking as well. Um, Weaning myself off, but then writing graphs and lists and everything. And I think that kind of helped me in a sense coming off alcohol. Um, it probably helped you as well. I'm sure, because you set your goal and then you became focused on it. So
Yeah, yeah, it definitely
it's good
helped.
and bad in a way.
How how did you? One because one of my biggest problem with stopping drinking was this idea that there were is looking at opportunities that I should have stopped and didn't. That's always been my biggest difficulty. That's kind of at times stopped me from celebrating stopping drinking. How have you dealt with times like that? Um,
In what sense? Not drinking at when times when you
so
do when.
I can pinpoint times where I've woken up the next morning and gone, I shouldn't drink anymore. And then I went out with my mates the next weekend and did it again
Mm,
after some. Like, there's one, I talk about it in one of my documentaries where my wheelchair had broken
mm,
and the bouncers had thrown me out. And I was obviously drunk at the time because my wheelchair was broken, they threw me out and I was irate and screaming at everybody I could scream at, essentially, because I was not very happy. And I just remember one of my mates ended up getting taken away by one of my other mates to calm them down because I'd upset them. I just remember hearing um, them say in the because I never, as I said, I never got blackout drunk, so I remember all of this. There was a time where they went, this literally happens every time he drinks.
yeah.
Uh, and
Did
I
was it happening every time?
it was
Yeah.
happening every single time.
That's when it's
So
as you rightly said, it's that's when it's the problem, isn't it? It's when it's causing problems left, right, and centre. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you were getting blackout drunk. It's causing a problem, and you were right.
because it was weird because I could have quite have easily gone Monday through Friday and not touched it, or even gone a week without touching it. But obviously, the drinking culture of university kind of makes you do drinking with the discounted drinks and
Yeah,
stuff like that. So it was more of a drinking culture that kept me like drinking and trying to be uh, social. I mean, it's a running joke in our community champions meetings that I spend more money on a night out now than when I was drinking in the first place,
yeah.
because it's true. But I just
Mhm.
remember, but I drank after that night as well, and that was one of the nights that I kind of think about. Like, oh, it should have really stopped then. To be fair, but sometimes, well, during my first couple of years, I think I've kind of gone past it now because sometimes I think that mistake of not doing it when you probably should have done I think sometimes it's a bigger motivator to not go back. So yes, you could have stopped them, but would it have been the motivator that it is now to not go back? Um, because it's like, I think for me, I think I would have, if I'd stopped drinking then, I think I would have stopped drinking until I stopped hanging out with those people, and then I would have started drinking again. I think that's what would have happened because I would have been around people I was more comfortable with, and they would have put up with it. So I think I would have stopped drinking until they were not um around anymore, then I think I would have gone back to the party lifestyle. It wasn't until obviously I tried to get myself ready for the pub golf and then realised there's no way out of this. Insufferable. I'm going to be an insufferable lightweight until the end of time. This needs to stop. Uh, but yeah, but I think that
I,
that
I,
was the big.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I think you have to come to that conclusion yourself when you hit that level where it's just not positive for you at all, is it? It's for me, it was the, until my mum and stepdad split up when I was 14. So I was drinking for a couple of years before that, 12 years old, down the park kind of thing. I was always the responsible one for the first couple of years between 12 and 14. And we'd go to like New Year's Eve parties. We'd walk through the country lanes and go get to a town square, and there'd be hundreds of people. And I was always the one looking after everyone. So when we first started drinking, I don't know what my old friends make of it. They must go, "What happened there?" Because I didn't tell anyone what was going on behind closed doors. All they knew is my mum and stepdad split up, and I was living between the two houses. I wasn't telling anyone what was going on. But so from when I became my mum's drinking partner when I was 14, I changed because my mum was angry, and she was drinking through anger, and that that was my role model. As sad as it sounds now, looking back on it, um, that's all I knew, kind of thing. It's another. I won't go into it too much, but my dad's quite famous, and he. People used to say to me, "What's it like? Is it weird having your dad's like a famous musician and stuff?" It's like I don't know any different. It was completely normal to me. Um, and there was an aspect. That's all I knew was getting blackout drunk with my mum, wake waking up in a wee soaked bed, because I didn't do it for I didn't wet the bed until I started getting blackout drunk. I'd never used to get blackout drunk, and I could get blind drunk. It was when I started drinking with my mum, and it was through anger. And if that, like I said to you, that guy in the pub, Reese, said he clocked it that I was just angry and nasty. And people say like your true colours come out when you've had a drink.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I believe that wholeheartedly.
I I I believe the opposite is the case in some aspects because, like I said, I was a popular kid in school. I'd always fight for what I believed in. I was fair. I was a nice kid. Like looking back, and what happened with my mum when I was drinking with my mum, and it became the blueprint of me being drunk. Was I became the opposite. I became nasty. I became a drama queen. Uh, I would throw accusations at people. I would lie. I can't stand. I've never been able to lie. I lie. I've lied like almost once in my life, and I never lived it down because I told a kid when I was 3 that I was born under the Niagara Falls in Canada, and we've stayed best mates for years, and he always brought it up. And so I've never been able to lie because he was one of my best mates. And he'd go, "Yeah, and you were born under Niagara Falls, weren't you?" Because I did grow up sorry, my baby years were in Canada. So when I came to nursery in Cardiff, apparently I did say to like my friend John, and he never let me live it down. So I've never been able to lie because of the shame of that original sin of a lie of saying I was born under Niagara Falls. I don't even remember saying it, but I probably did. Anyway, so I've never been a particularly good liar. But when I drunk, I've been told the most scary thing was that when I got blackout drunk, I looked and spoke as though I was straight, which is a weird thing. So I could be slurred and everything, and people would say the few people that did tell me is suddenly my eyes became normal again, and you wouldn't know I was drunk, which was quite scary. But I would lie. I would say the maddest things, and that was the problem for me. And I don't think it's always true. I think it was always maybe when I was drunk, is because I was so angry and had enough. I think I was subconsciously saying, "Screw you, screw the world." Do you know what I mean? It was like I'll lie, I'll cause trouble. My saving grace, thankfully, is even though I was quite a tough cookie, is I couldn't fight at all when I was drunk.
Yeah.
So it was like so I wasn't dangerous. Do you know what I mean? I know a lot of people can get drunk and glass people and get very dangerous. I was the complete opposite. I could really look after myself when I was sober, but as soon as I had a drink, I could not. So I was getting into scrapes by saying the most ridiculous stuff. I was an embarrassment kind of thing, and so it's something I've always sort of wondered is I became the opposite of what I was like when I was drunk. You know, when I became drunk, everything I didn't like, I became. It was, it was, it was a very weird thing. But yeah, I'm sure some people do wish they were confident and then have a drink and become confident. But I was confident beforehand, and I just became a liar and a drama queen. Two things I can't stand in people. Um, I can't stand liars, and um, yeah, people who are attention seeking, and that's what, unfortunately, what I was during that period when I went off the rails, and it was all kind of a learned behaviour from my mum. Looking back, and that's what my mum was doing. And so that, like I said before, when I was 12, 13, and we were drinking down the park, I was well behaved. I was quite responsible. Well, even though we were drinking and smoking down the park, but I became the opposite. I became everything. I became like an anti version of myself. Um, and I've found that quite interesting now, looking back, wondering why that is. And I will always bring it up when people say, "Ah, well, you show your true colours." I always give people a lot of leeway when they're drunk and they've done something stupid. I won't cast them away like maybe other people would, even heavy drinkers would, um, because I do understand that some people genuinely don't know what they've done or what they're doing. And you touched on it earlier. Everything's a good idea when you're drunk. You're right, aren't you? All the time.
Yeah.
Mm. And as you know, that's a dangerous mindset to have when you've had a drink. And I think it's that kind of almost hedonism of alcohol that almost allows you to think, everything I do is right. Let's do it. Or that scaffolding, or that person who looked at me funny, or anything's game, and just cause. It just causes so much trouble. It did for my mum. My mum was like I said, she was an alcoholic, and it just destroyed her life completely. And I watched it in real time. She was a beautiful looking woman, and she just became an insular. Um, yeah, just it was quite sad watching her especially towards the end when she got ill. But that's my view on how alcohol can change. Thing I don't think it always brings out the true colours. I think it sometimes brings out the opposite, or at least it did with me.
That was glamorous indie rock and roll by the Killers. Once again, another fantastic conversation with Nat there. If you are affected by any of the issues brought up in that discussion, you can call the Samaritans at 116 123 to get any help with anything you need. And also, if it's specifically due to substances, you can go to talktofrank.com. Once again, you are not alone in this fight if you are struggling. Everyone's here to help you. And if you want to get involved with the cause that me and Nat are involved with, you can become a community champion. Just type in Alcohol Change UK. They're a fantastic organisation that's helping people improve drinking life. So they do things like buying drinks safer, and just improving legislation to give us a better, safer drinking experience. This show has been a great show. I think I've really enjoyed doing the show. Finally get a chance to talk about Finding Emily was fantastic, and I absolutely loved doing it. But now it is time to tell you about what's happening next week. Next week we will be diving into my most anticipated film of the year. Yes, I said that last week, but now that Finding Emily's behind me, the next one is In Tow, in Power Ballad. I'm a very simple man, you see, people. I see Paul Rudd on a movie poster. I'm there opening weekend. That's how simple it is for me. I can't wait to see if he is a part of another instant classic alongside Nick Jonas, and you'll be getting my thoughts on that film. I almost said song there. Next week. To give you the premise, a guy who's in a wedding band uh, goes to a gig with a famous singer, they jam, and shenanigans ensues. He discovers one of the songs of the wedding band and he takes it to the stratosphere and he tries to get credit for a song that he wrote. I think the premise is absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to see what they do with it. And also, we will be looking at the Al Pacino film, The Tuna. This is a film I've been seeing every time I go to the cinema, it seems, at the moment. Every time I go, there's an advert for it, but I cannot wait to see it. I'm a massive Al Pacino fan. I'm sure he's going to knock it out of the park once again. And your homework for this week, speaking of Al Pacino, is to watch his first Oscar win in Scent of a Woman. It stars him alongside Chris O'Donnell in one of the most impactful films I've ever seen. It is a phenomenal film, and you will not be wasting time watching it whatsoever. And I cannot wait to talk to you about Al Pacino's first Oscar win next week. But most importantly, I've discovered the next time we'll be on air, the World Cup will be in full swing. And I cannot wait to break that down for you guys over the next month or so, and my excitement knows no bounds. I've been watching everything under the sun to justify this New England squad that Thomas Tuchel's taken out, but I believe in the boys, as we all should, and I think it's an important time for our country to gang together and represent the flag in the best way possible. There's been a lot of controversy in the world at the moment, and just remember that this is a time for togetherness and to root for these young lads to finally bring football home. Uh, so just remember that when you're watching it. Make sure maybe hug a stranger when they score or hold hands in a tense moment. Just bring the country together in the same way that these guys are going to do it for us. But I can't explain it the best way about how football's coming home. So I've scoured the earth to find you this new song from these guys that could explain it better than I ever could. Here is the Lightning Seeds with Three Lions. I cannot wait to see you guys next week for another banging show. But here is the Three Lions with Football is Coming Home. Because it is, baby.